Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here on a Friday afternoon for this really exciting conversation, The Power of Self-Directed Learning with Isaac Oboth. If you have not already done your research on Isaac, not to worry, today's session is sure to inspire you and you'll definitely want to see more of Isaac's work. I am your host, Kiana, and for those of you who do not know me, I am a facilitator with a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurial leadership program, aka BEL, at ALU Mauritius, and this session is brought to you by the inaugural BEL cohort. Now, just a few house rules before I introduce our guests. Please turn on your camera. We want to see your lovely faces instead of gray boxes on the screen if you can help it. Please keep yourself on mute. You don't want to be that one person who accidentally unmutes and we hear, secrets about your life. And use the chat box. Write in your questions, your reactions, emojis. We want to see a live chat box going on here. And last but certainly not least, let's all have a good time. And before I introduce our guests, I want to give you all just a little snippet of a short film about Isaac's life, and it's called Lights Out.
Boy, hatulianga bakabaka naye ncha enjala egenda kutukalakata.
And just like that, I had my very first business idea.
Lights out! Yeah, hey yo, I had to make a move. No other way to choose, snooze or lose. Make a break, make a way in good old KLA. Had to take, nothing's given. Life gets so unforgiving. Make a shilling, make a killing just so I could make a living. Stuck with heartbreak, stuck between the rock and the hard place. Had to find a way to turn that rock to a hard cake. While y'all be dreaming, I be scheming just to stay ahead. The irony, I had to sell you bread just to get daily bread. You either give in to the hunger or you profit from a lack of funds. A double can't slumber, gotta hustle, hand to God.
All right, that's just a little taste of Isaac's short film. If you want to watch the whole thing, it is available on YouTube. We'll make sure to send that link later on today. But you can see there's a lot of flavor, there's a lot of beauty going on, a lot of good work of art, that comes from Isaac. And being an artist myself, I am really excited to hear some of these gems, hear more about Isaac's story. So before I spotlight our guests, I just want to introduce a little bit more about who Isaac is. He is a self-taught filmmaker from Uganda. So if you have any Ugandan students on the call, please let us know where you are. He is the founder of African Storytellers, a production company producing narrative films and documentaries that showcase African beauty. He is an Andisha Prize winner and was listed on Forbes' top 30 under 30 most promising entrepreneurs in Africa in 2014, in 2015, and 2017. Isaac has been featured in BBC News and has worked with CNN to research, produce, and shoot a 30-minute travel show about Mauritius. He has worked closely with CNN International to produce Inside Africa, Marketplace Africa, and African Voices, which are broadcast 3 times a week to over 400 million households around the world, sharing the wonders of Africa. As a proud Ugandan, one of his projects is called Discover Uganda, a 10-episode TV series showcasing the top tourist properties in the Pearl of Africa. Let's give Isaac a warm ALU welcome. Isaac, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Yo, thanks for having me. I'm very good, very happy to be here today.
Isaac, I am so excited. As I shared with everyone, I'm also an artist, and it's very rare that I actually get to have conversations with people like you about what we're so passionate about and what we love to do. So before I ask you some of the main questions of conversation, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your origin story. Who is Isaac? Where do you come from? Maybe a little bit about how you grew up and exactly what you do and why you do it.
All right, so I'll get right into the meat and the potatoes of it. I grew up in Kampala, and probably the most defining moment in my life is when I was 16 years old and I was in boarding school in Uganda. I don't know how many of you have been to like traditional boarding school in Africa. I'm not talking about the fancy schools with horses and, talking about like proper basic boarding school. We have this thing called visiting day, which happened once every 3 months. And basically what happened on this day, that's when your parents or your guardians came to see you, just to make sure that you're still alive. They gave you a little pocket money. And it was the most exciting day at boarding school. I remember this particular visiting day when I was 16, I was standing at the gate, waiting to be visited myself, and everyone else was having the time of their life. Yeah, ours was once every 3 months, not once a month, man. So, everyone was having a wonderful time. Families were on the lawn having picnics, having, warm meals from home, and I was waiting to be visited. My older brother, who was my guardian at the time, he's the one that was looking after me, was paying my school fees. He was everything in the world to me, hadn't come yet. And it was about 10 minutes to the end of visiting day. Right before everything shut down, he strolls in and he basically told me, I have nothing to offer you. I've been fired from my job. I actually can't even afford to pay your school fees for the rest of this term. So if there's anything you can do to make money, do it. I was 16 years old, I was in boarding school, and I had never really thought about making money at the time. And at this point in my life, probably the most important thing to me was school, because I felt like that was the only way I was going to make anything out of myself. I identified as an academic student, and I came from a rather challenging background. So to be told that that was going to come to an end really shattered me. And I remember at the end of prep that night, which prep is mandatory reading that we had to do from 7 to 9:30 p.m. At the end of prep that night, I was laying on my bed, just staring at the ceiling, and all my classmates were, having all this leftover food from visiting day. And they were talking about, how good this person's chicken is, how good the person's fish fingers is. And, I was completely blacked out. I was just thinking about, is this the end of my road? And then one of the guys, actually in the deck below me, said, tonight we're feasting like kings, but tomorrow we're going to be starving. Because we didn't have food after prep typically. This was just, this only happened once every 3 months. And that's when I got my eureka moment. That was my light bulb moment. I figured, if I could make something I could sell to all these hungry kids every day after prep, I could make some money. It seemed like a perfect opportunity. So the next day I ran to the food and nutrition laboratory that we had at my school, and I talked to the guy that ran it, and I told him about my brilliant idea. Let's make a snack that we can sell to all these hungry kids every day after prep. And after some brainstorming, he came up with this idea to make a rock band. I don't know if any of you have had a rock band before, but essentially what it is, it's a giant cookie of deliciousness. That's how I like to describe it. Just imagine if a muffin had a baby with a cookie. That's what you'd get. That's what a rock band is. So it's soft and moist on the inside. It has this thin hard crust on the outside. So it's a beautiful contrast. You bite into it, it's warm, it's moist. You don't need to have a drink. And it's healthy. So it seemed like the perfect thing to make. So this guy told me that in order for it to make business sense, we'd have to buy ingredients in bulk. So that meant, I needed quite a bit of capital to make these rock bands. I actually needed about $60, to buy a bucket of margarine, to buy some eggs, to buy some flour. And like I told you, I had zero money to my name. But fortunately, I had friends that had been visited the day before. So I went and borrowed money from, at least 10 of my good friends, 10,000 shillings, 15,000 shillings, 20,000 shillings, whatever I could get. And then I went downtown and I bought myself the ingredients. And that night we began baking. And by we, I mean the guy in the lab, because I had no idea how to work the kitchen. So, this guy baked the rock bands. And by the end of prep, I had a small box of about 300 rock bands in it. And I walked to the front of my dormitory, and I didn't even need to make a pitch or to, convince people. I was mobbed. I sold out in like 10 minutes. I had, I was in a dormitory of about 400 hungry young men that had their last meal about 4 hours ago. So I was a perfect monopoly. It was a great business. About 3 weeks in, this business was working completely independently of me. I had a guy that would deliver the ingredients from downtown on a motorcycle taxi, which we call border borders here. And then the guy in the lab would, start baking the rock bands. We're making different flavors by this point, cinnamon, strawberry, raspberry. And then I had guys from the different rooms in the dormitory pick up a box or two, distribute them. And all I really did was count money and taste the rock bands for quality control purposes, of course. So that was my gig, and it was pretty smooth sailing for about a year and a half. I was saving money. I was able to pay my way through school, and I had my first real test of entrepreneurship, of what it was like to create something that works independently of you. And I knew this is what I wanted to do. Towards the end of my time in boarding school, I was, thinking about what am I going to do after this? I was thinking about my legacy in school, about how I was going to be remembered. And as these thoughts were bubbling in my head, it was a few days to the biggest social event of our lives, prom. That's all everyone was thinking and talking about. So I got this idea to make a slideshow from prom, because it felt like the only thing that mattered. People are going to dress up really nicely, get dates. It's how we're going to remember our time in school. And I felt like, the money that I had saved, I could create a product that I could sell to my classmates, make a bit more money, but also be remembered for something rather significant. So I got this idea to make a slideshow, take everyone's pictures, add some music to it, something really basic. And I talked to a few of my classmates about this idea I was having, and they all seemed to really like it. I actually began getting pre-orders for it. They're like, man, that thing you're talking about, I want a copy. And, it seemed really nice, but I had no idea how to make this thing. I didn't have any skills in editing or adding music or creating a slideshow. So I talked to a dude that used to shoot a lot of weddings in Kampala, and I described to him what I wanted to do, and he told me it was a piece of cake. He could do it in his sleep. So the day of prom came, and pictures were taken, and my contact from downtown, the wedding filmmaker guy, got those pictures, and about 3 weeks later, he delivered 250 DVDs to me, branded and finished, already burned. And I was really, really excited. I ran up to the computer laboratory and put in one of those DVDs, to watch this amazing product that I promised my classmates. And it was terrible. It was a train wreck of a slideshow. I mean, it just didn't make any sense. Right from the get-go, the music was wrong. The pictures were not in chronological order. Some of them were actually upside down. It was just a disaster. And it was done. Like, I had 250 DVDs already finished. And I was really concerned that, all the money I'd sunk into this thing, all my savings from my rock band business was going to be wasted, but it was also going to be an embarrassment. But the crazy thing was, when my classmates watched it, they wouldn't stop laughing. Like, everything that I thought made it terrible just cracked them up. And it took me a while to figure this thing out, but I think it was just one of those things that was so bad it was good, I sold out. In about 3 days, we sold every single DVD we had made. We actually had to make a couple more copies, and people that had taken pictures of their own cameras gave them to me, and we made what we call the deluxe version with extra bonus pictures, and we sold it at a bit of a higher price. I went into my long holiday, which we have in Uganda after high school, with this deep curiosity. People were willing to pay what I thought was a lot of money for something that was a terrible product. How much more they pay for it if it was done well? And that's when I began, going online and watching tutorials about what it takes to edit, what it takes to shoot, what it takes to, add music to videos. And at first it was just, 10 minutes a day at an internet cafe where one of my friends was working. And it's like, every time I learned something new, I just couldn't get enough. I wanted to learn more and more and more. A few weeks in, I was spending 16 hours a day watching tutorials just through the night, downloading software, experimenting. And I had never been hit with an itch like that. I just couldn't get enough. I had this insatiable thirst for it. And that's where I discovered my deep passion for filmmaking. It was kind of an accident, honestly. And at the end of that holiday, I went back to my boarding school, and I talked to the kids that were about to have their prom. And I told them, you see this thing that I made for my year, this slideshow? I can actually make a video of your prom that's 10 times better than this at half the price that I paid to make this to make this slideshow. And it was a deal the guy couldn't say no to. We shook hands. That was my first product, and I got paid about $90 for that film. And that's the money I used to register my first production company, which is called Media 256. And it is based in Kampala. It has 10 full-time employees today. And Media 256 is actually the business that goes around shooting all this content for CNN and other organizations like, ALU or the MasterCard Foundation. So that's really how it started. That's my origin story.
Wow. Thank you, Isaac. I mean, it started all the way back from when you were 16 years old making cookies to now being, a successful filmmaker across Africa. I mean, being at that age and just taking things into your own hands, right? Not being able to pay your school fees and just using your creativity and the resources around you and getting investments from your friends, to start up this business and really seeing, how entrepreneurship can actually, can help you, right? And even lead you in different directions. Which for you was editing, the video for prom. So that's really cool to hear. So you talked a little bit about the motivation behind being or becoming a filmmaker and a film editor. But I'm sure that the motivation and the inspiration has changed a bit now, right? I don't think it's just about money. So tell us what inspires you to make films and be a filmmaker?
Well, I think it comes from what what happened is, as Media 256 kind of started becoming more and more successful, I began getting projects outside Uganda, which honestly is a whole other story in itself. But as I began traveling more, I was shocked by how ignorant people were about Uganda and about Africa. I can't tell you how many times I would sit next to someone on an airplane and they would ask me if Idi Amin is still the president of Uganda, or where exactly it is on the map. And I got this incredible desire to use the skills that I'd been honing, filming and editing, to create content that showed a new face to the continent. So it just happened through those interactions, and that's really how Discover Uganda was born. And Discover Uganda was actually the first original IP created by Media 256. That's something that we put our money into, and it's something that we owned. So I came up with this idea to create a 10-part TV show that showcased only the very, 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 very best cream of the crop of Uganda. It was really inspired by Top Gear. I used to watch a lot of Top Gear. So the show is just these two people going around Uganda, showcasing the top properties, doing challenges, from things that are, adrenaline pumping things, like whitewater rafting and bungee jumping, to going on crazy safaris, going trekking with the gorillas. And when this show was broadcast, even in Uganda, I had a lot of my peers asking me if this was Uganda, because they honestly hadn't seen this side to our country. A lot of times we market the top things in our countries to tourists and not to the locals. So we give it a bit of a local twist. And that show was broadcast locally in Uganda, and we also distributed it with the Africa channel in the US. So I think along the way, I kind of got interested in this idea of telling a different story about Africa. And when I really synthesized it, the kind of work that I was gravitating towards, or that I enjoyed doing, focused on five themes. So African beauty, African excellence, African enterprise, African ingenuity, and African resilience. And that's why I started, my second production company with that deep focus, which is called African Storytellers. It's actually registered in Mauritius. And the idea with African Storytellers is to rewrite the story of Africa using film and digital video. So creating films and documentaries that focus on those 5 key themes, and doing it for a profit.
That's amazing. I love that. Would love to hear some reactions, some questions that you might have in the chat box. But in the meantime, I just kind of want to throw out there that in my double life, I'm an actor. So if you need actors, come call me. We've got actors on the call as well. show up, show out with the actors here. So, we've definitely got a lot of people who you want to explore, the production that you do. Yeah, but I think it's just amazing the power that film can have to expose people to things through storytelling, right? I think that's such a beautiful thing. So the next thing that I want to talk about, and you mentioned a little bit of this in your origin story, was how you would go to internet cafes and kind of watch snippets and videos of tutorials on the whole filmmaking process. So I'd love to hear you speak more about that and this idea of self-directed learning and how that helped shape you as a filmmaker.
Hi, can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
Cool. So like I said, for me, it was all by accident. I didn't seek it out. I think from my own personal experience, self-directed learning only happens when you're truly curious about something. You have to have that deep curiosity, like you're doing it even without the idea of getting paid, you get to a point where you're so curious about something, you lose track of time. That's what would happen to me. Like I would just go down a rabbit hole and the sun would set, the sun would come up, it didn't matter. I just needed to figure this thing out. And for me, that I feel very fortunate that I was able to find or to have this deep curiosity at a time when I had a lot of free time on my hands. I was in between high school and university. I had nothing else going on, so I could literally afford to sit there and watch tutorials every day. And sometimes I would watch stuff and it wouldn't make any sense to me. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? I don't know if you guys know a website called lynda.com. They make these very informative but rather very dry tutorials, and that's what I had to watch. And sometimes I really wouldn't understand what I was saying. And then like a month later, it would click all of a sudden, like I'd be on a border on a taxi. I'm like, oh, that's what the person actually meant. And I think one of the really frustrating things for me is every time I didn't understand something, it's not like I could just put up my hand and talk to the person and ask them to explain it to me. So self-directed learning can be quite frustrating, but I think one of the beautiful things about it is that when something really clicks, you'll never, ever, ever forget it. So those are my 2 cents on self-directed learning.
Yeah, I like that you said that it's really about having a deep curiosity about something, and that curiosity can be so deep that you lose track of time. I think a lot of us have experienced that at one point in our lives, where there's just something that we have to know, and everything in the outside world just kind of is in the background while we're investigating this thing. So self-directed learning is actually a big component of the BEL program. So kind of want to pick a little bit more at this idea and the role that it played in your journey. Did you ever set some goals for yourself when it came to learning certain aspects of the film industry and what it takes to be a filmmaker?
In the early days, no. In the early days, it was just complete chaos. I would just watch as many tutorials as I could, and that was it. There was no structure. I would, I would go in, trying to figure out how an effect I saw in a film was made, whether it was like a slow cross dissolve, and then I would end up, on a tutorial about sound. So it was very messy. And after about 6 months of watching all the tutorials, if you asked me to teach someone everything that I learned, I think I could teach it to you in 5 days, but it took me 6 months of just trial and error, messing about, So no, I had no goals and no structure. But the older I got, and when the business really began taking off and I was really specific about what I wanted to learn, then I had more structure, then I had more discipline. I'd actually start setting goals for myself. And the most recent skill that I've tried to learn, or that I've been trying to build, is now writing scripts. So not scripts for documentaries, but scripts for feature films. And that's probably the most structured learning I have done ever. Even before I began watching content, I made sure it was something that was going to be worth my while. I put aside time to do that. I practiced, I got feedback. And that I was able to do in a much, much shorter period of time than it took me to, learn how to shoot and how to edit.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing you saying is that without the structure, it kind of took you a much longer time to gain certain skills, because it was just kind of like they came as they came, right? They came as the interest was there, or as the video popped up, but with more structure, you were able to gain a certain skill in a shorter amount of time, because there was clear set goals and boundaries there.
Yes, yes.
Okay, nice. So on the topic of that, what were some of the challenges and obstacles you faced in becoming a filmmaker, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think my biggest challenge is I wasn't just trying to be a filmmaker. I was actually trying to make money. So it's finding that marriage between, filmmaking and profit. I had that strong realization early on in my life that it doesn't matter how noble your cause is, how important you think what you want to do is. If you don't have the money to do it, you're probably never going to do it. So having my own money and being able to go and do something because I cared about it and not having to convince other people was really, really important to me. So building a business around something that I loved, something that, like I said, I could lose track of just because I enjoyed it was tricky. How do I balance those two things? And, it's still something that I'm trying to do to this day. But on the business front in itself, I think one of the biggest challenges is getting trust from blue chip clients, from multinationals. And the bigger they are, the harder it is to get that trust. I had to do a lot of pro bono work just to get my foot in the door. And for each of the big clients that I have, there's a long story behind how I was able to get a project. But I'll just share two short stories. One specifically, key moment is when I started doing work for Coca-Cola. And I used to watch the work that was done for Coca-Cola in Uganda specifically. And I knew in my heart of hearts, I could do work better than what they were delivering. But, it's a big organization. They sign these 10-year deals. So there's no way they were ever going to consider me. But they were having this big launch for a new campaign. And I was able to get a meeting with a marketing manager. And I told her, listen, I can help create content around this campaign. You don't have to pay me anything. You don't have to sign anything. Have the other agency you're working with do the same thing. And at the end of the campaign, just look at my work and look at what they deliver. If you like my stuff, this is how much you pay. They just cover my costs. It's way less than what you're paying. If you don't like it, don't use it. There's no loss. So they did the campaign, and I went through just, with me, I had my first camera, which was a 5D Mark II, and I shot this content around Uganda. And the time that I presented it to her boss was actually in the room, and he could not believe what I had done just as a guy with a camera. And I was like, man, I don't know how much this kid is asking for, but just pay him whatever he needs because this is going to make us look really, really good. So that for me was, another moment where I realized it doesn't matter how much work you show people about what you could do. It's when you do it for them that they truly, truly get it. When they see, especially if they can compare it to something else that they've been doing. So that's something that I continue to do. And even with CNN, that's kind of how I got into doing work for them. I was the driver for a CNN crew for 2 weeks. I kept on trying to tell these guys, I can do work for you. And that opportunity never really happened, but there's a time a crew was coming out to Uganda and they needed a driver, and I got word of it. And I offered to drive them for 2 weeks just to build that relationship. And when they were done with their shooting, there's a story they hadn't finished. And I said, guys, I can actually pick up the rest of that story for you. Same thing. If you like it, use it. You only have to pay this much. If you don't like it, no loss. And, when we finished doing it, of course, we went all out. Like I brought everything that I had, to the table. When they watched it, it was actually better than what they had been getting. And it's a no-brainer when you think about it. I'm from here. I have way more access. I know the people. I can frankly, because I care, do a better job about creating stories from Uganda or from Africa for that matter. And that's how that started, so from half an African voices to, 3 years later being the largest creator of feature Africa shows on CNN. It started with that, building a little bit of trust, showing them that I can do for them this thing that I'm telling them I can do. And obviously there's a lot of rejection along the way. that you have to have tough skin, and you need to be able to expect rejection, and also just know that it's a numbers game. For every 10 requests you make, you're probably going to get one yes, but you have to make that one yes count, you know. So yeah, those are some of the challenges that I've faced in trying to build a business, but also as a filmmaker.
Wow, there were so many gems. I mean, like, I look at my notes, I'm like trying to keep up with all the points that you're making. But yeah, I think this is such good insight for people who are interested in being getting into the arts industry just as a whole, right? I think a lot of this that you're sharing and the mindsets really apply across the artist industry. So there were a couple of things that I noticed about what you said, and there's a big theme about networking and you kind of putting yourself out there and speaking with the right people and kind of having this business person mindset, and giving them these proposals, right? So that there's no everybody wins in the situation, right? So maybe you didn't get money out of the project, but you got exposure, right? But then again, there's only so much exposure that before, you know, you have to start paying the bills, right? So there's always this fine line, you know, with artists across the industry of, you know, how much can they actually put themselves out there before things start to get real, right? And I think that's where the networking aspects comes into play, right? Just putting yourself out there, kind of getting out of your comfort zone, being your own hype person, and saying like, this is what I can deliver for you, and you know, putting your name out there. And there was something else that you said about, you know, filmmaking and profit, and building a business around something that you love, right? And it reminded me of this idea of ikigai, which are my students in BEL. We recently did this and talked about, you know, the intersection between doing what you love and doing what you can get paid for, right? And so for a lot of people, it comes down to what can I get paid for, and not necessarily what I love or what I'm good at, right? So it's really nice and inspiring to see that you have found that intersection and that you've built yourself up to that intersection of being paid for something that you love to do, and that also has impact. So I love that. On the conversation of being on that, finding that intersection, right, of doing what you love, making money out of it, and having impact. I wanted to ask you, what is your personal mission, and how did you actually arrive at it? And I ask this because we have a bunch of students on this call who are currently exploring and trying to define their mission in the world. And I think hearing from somebody like you who has a similar background as them, as an entrepreneurial background, what is your mission and how did you arrive at it?
So my mission keeps changing over the last, I've been doing this for about 12 years now. And even in that 12-year period, I think I've had 4 different missions. So my very, very first mission was making money to pay my school fees, you know, and as long as my conscience was okay with it, I was going to do it. And that, you know, was making rock bands. That's what it ended up being. I wasn't passionate about rock bands, you know, but I was passionate about staying in school. So that drove me, you know, it didn't matter. I was going to find a way to make that money. Then later on, my mission was learning how to make decent videos, just decent. I wasn't trying to, you know, win an Oscar or anything. I just wanted to make something that made sense, where the pictures were not upside down, where the music actually sounded good, where I could hear what someone was saying. And then about a year of doing that, my mission became to create the best quality films in Uganda. And after I achieved that, I wanted to do that across Africa. And once that started happening, right now, I think my mission is to take the skills that I've built over the past, you know, 12 years, to really contribute in a very, very significant way towards rewriting the story of Africa. And that for me is to create films and documentaries that focus on 5 African beauty, African excellence, African ingenuity, Africans, and showcase those to work and make money doing it. So that's my mission right now.
That's lovely. Can everybody hear me okay? I just want to make sure that my internet is stable here. Just throw me a thumbs up if it's good. Okay, cool. Thank you. Isaac, man, you're hitting it right on the head. You're hitting the nail right on the head, on the money. This is exactly what we were talking about in the BEL cohort, this idea of missions and how they can change over time and how they should change over time, right? It's not always about just having one mission. And thinking about, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but like the golden circle of figuring out your mission, right? Starting with the why, the how, and then the what, right? And usually what happens is people kind of are focused on the money aspect, right? What can I do to get money, right? And that tends to be somebody's first mission. And over time, you start to find purpose, you start to find identity, you start to find a calling, right? All the things that you're good at, all the things that you're passionate about. And suddenly what you do becomes more about why you do it, right? And I'm hearing a strong theme of wanting to kind of expose the beauty of Africa and all that it has to offer. And the way in which you do that is through film, right? And I find that incredibly powerful and incredibly beautiful. So the last question I'll ask before I open it up to everybody else to ask their questions is, what advice do you have for young Africans who are aspiring filmmakers or who are trying to break into that industry?
I think the biggest advice is, for filmmaking, you really learn by doing. That is the best way, I watched tutorials for 6 months, but my biggest education was going back to my high school and actually trying to use, that information I've gathered from tutorials to actually make a decent prom video for that graduating class. And it took me 2 weeks of editing. I had this crazy setup of 3 computers. One was my brother's and 2 were for friends of mine because I didn't have enough space on one hard drive to edit that video. So just going through that entire experience, jumping through all those challenges, trying to figure out a way to make this video, that's how I learned. So going out and doing is the best way to learn. I think the beautiful thing about filmmaking and any art is it's a function of time. You'll only get better the longer you stick at it. Your skills will improve. It is bound to happen. It's like physics. Yeah, and your first work will be your best work. People will give you crap for it, and even you yourself, when you watch work that you did, 5 years before you started, you realize that people took a chance on you because you'll see your growth. It will be evident. So, yeah, if you want to be a filmmaker, if you want to be an artist, go out and do, because that is the only way to grow, and that is the only real way to learn.
Yes, and I don't know how if people on the call can tell how old Isaac is, but when he says that he was working on some of these computers, we're not talking about Macs, we're not talking about Microsoft computers, we're talking about like the dial-up computers, with the chunky equipment, so there's definitely a lot of, hours and work that was put into learning these things. So I think my biggest takeaway here is, the best education that you can get about something is actually going out there and doing it, right? There's only so much you can learn about like the theoretical aspect of all of these things. And I like that you said that at some point you're going to be good at it. You just have to keep going, right? Keep practicing. That's awesome. All right, well, thank you, Isaac. I'm going to turn it over to the students on the call to ask some questions. And I'm going to start off with one that I found in the chat box. So this will give everybody an opportunity to put your thoughts together. And this question is from Memo, and she says, what are the things you want to change about the film industry and its growth in digital technology and opportunity or threat to what you do?
So the things I want to change about the film industry is I see this incredible imbalance in terms of how we are represented as a continent, but also as just people of color. I feel like for decades, for centuries, we've only been represented in one way. And I think there's a lot of work to do to tip that scale. So that's really what I want to do. I want to create films that, showcase a human side to people from the continent, to Africans, to Africa, but then also that are fun to watch, that are engaging, that people will want to share, talk about. So finding that intersection, that's something that is very, very, very key for me. And I think technology is only helping in that. I don't think this is a job that only one company can do or only one person can do. Like I said, the imbalance is significant. So we need a critical mass of filmmakers. We need a critical mass of content of all forms. It could be podcasts, it could be short films, it could be documentaries, music, whatever it is. We need to create that balance for people of color and for the continent. And technology is only going to help us to do that.
Nice. Thank you for that. I hope everybody's taking their notes. I'm going to pass it on to Grateful and then followed by Nemo. Grateful, over to you.
Hi, Isaac. Good afternoon. I'm listening to this session. I've just been so excited, and I've got a couple of questions. By a couple, I mean like a lot of questions, but I'll not ask them at a go. So I'll just ask like maybe 2 or 1. Okay, so okay, the first one is, as an aspiring actress, right? What strategy would you suggest I use to at least get an audition for a professional movie? And then second one would, how do you choose your star cast? Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to try to answer the actress question. Honestly, it is very, very hard being an actor or an actress, because people are not just judging your work, they're also kind of judging you. So you need to have very, very tough skin. I think the best thing you can do is to, before you go, and you get audition for a Netflix original or anything like that, if there are people around you, your peers, your classmates that are actually creating content, if you can be in that content, that would be a great and a very, very safe place for you to build your confidence and also take feedback, and also create a reel that you can show around to the professional casting directors, because you have to have something that you can show. You can't just tell people you can act. You have to have something that they can see to see your acting chops. So definitely work with your peers. And I think if you also have the ability or the time to write, that is something that's incredible key, because you can actually cast yourself. You can put yourself in something. You can write your dream role. I think that is a superpower for anyone that wants to act, to be able to actually create the characters for yourself, whether it's a short or a monologue, whatever it is. But you have to make. And how do I cast? So I've been doing documentaries for about 11 years. I just recently started getting into the narrative space. So I'm kind of new to it. And right now I just look for, I use my experience in documentary to inform my narrative work. And one of the things that I enjoy the most about documentaries is being in the middle of nowhere. I mean, like absolutely nowhere, no internet connection, no electricity, no radio in an entire village, and just me and a camera, and making actors out of, very humble, very ordinary people. So I like finding truly authentic people that, you look at them and they fit the role. It doesn't even seem like they're acting. You can, like this, that's the person that is, they look like the words on the paper. So I like working with first-time actors. I like working with young actors, people that don't have ideas in their heads of how they think it should be done, but are willing to learn and grow. And for my short film, the people that I cast were actually not necessarily the best people that showed up for the audition, but there are people that took direction the best. Like within the audition, they were able to show evidence that they can learn. So like the main character in my short film is actually called Michael Jackson. And the entire crew can testify to this, that in the 14 days that we shot, there was this huge growth. On day one, we did like, I don't know, 99 takes, and we didn't use any of them. But by the last day, this kid was knocking stuff out in one take, and he had demonstrated that in his audition, that he could learn. The ability to learn is such a superpower. And I think for as long as I can, I'm going to try and work with people that demonstrate that ability.
I know I have a lot of questions, but like Kiana's already given me signs that I should cut it down. So maybe I'll just try to reach out and ask all the questions. So you mentioned your production company, and I didn't quite get the name.
All right.
So
we'll send links in the chat.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let me read the questions then.
Really, really good question though, Grateful. And just to interject here before I pass it on to Nemo, Grateful is being a little bit humble here. She's not an aspiring actor. She is an actress, right? She is putting out content, she is involved in some of the films that was happening on campus as well. Students came together, wrote, produced, filmed, acted in, and are currently in the process of editing a film. So she is part of that team there. So you are an actress, you're not an aspiring, right? You're doing the work. So just want to put that out there. And yeah, so we got a couple gems here. Isaac is telling us that there are opportunities, right? It might be hard, but there are opportunities that exist. And the biggest, point to consider is show that you're willing to learn. Show that you can take feedback, right? And I'll pass it over to you, Nemo.
Hi, Isaac. My name is Nemo. I'm from Kenya. I just wanted to ask, mine is a two-part question. So I'm a photographer and I want to go into documentary and videography as well. And I just wanted to ask, how did you go about establishing your worth as you grew in your craft? And also how you stayed motivated and focused in an industry in Africa that's not really, it's an industry that people consider to be a hobby and not really a career. So how did you, stay motivated despite maybe naysayers throughout your journey?
All right. So the first part of your question, how I established my worth, was by working with blue chip clients. And another trick that you could use, something that I did myself, is you find two blue chip clients that are in competition with each other. So when you do work for one of them and you get across the road to the next one, they don't know that you did that work for free. Like when I did pro bono work for Coca-Cola, Pepsi did not know that. They're like, if this guy is good enough for Coca-Cola, it's good enough for Pepsi, and then you can dictate, your terms. You have to do some research for yourself, find out who are the, top photographers in Nairobi, how much are they getting paid, what is the daily rate, and, find your sweet spot. So you don't sound crazy when you actually get paid. Then the other thing is, people in Africa might consider, film to be a hobby. But when they see you buying your first, C-class Mercedes Benz, they'll get the message. They'll take you seriously, when you move into a nicer neighborhood, when you actually can start paying the bills for some of your siblings and for your parents, no one is going to think twice about how you're making your money, man. Like when the money shows up, you'll get the respect that you deserve. And more than that, you will feel fulfilled as a human being, which is even more important. When you truly, truly love something and you care about it, something truly special happens. Because you're spending more time, the people that are doing it as a chore, you're going to keep on getting better. And I honestly believe that you're better off being extraordinary at something you think is ordinary than something you think is extraordinary. So, find that intersection between what you love and what you can get paid for, and just go all in.
Thank you so much. Can I ask one more question? I wanted to ask, what advice would you give me? I've been a photographer for about 2-3 years, and I tell stories through my images, but what advice would you give me going into videography and, documentary creation?
So the beautiful thing about photography is, I mean, I assume you're shooting manual, so you know how light works. You know how to control your aperture, your shutter speed, and all these things. That's exactly how professional cameras work. They are built on the basis of photography, so you can really speak the language. That is an incredible asset that you have already. I think what you need to figure out as a filmmaker is, what do you enjoy watching? What do you enjoy consuming? And use that to inform what you want to create, but making it as original as possible. And then, building a portfolio. The most important thing for a filmmaker, at least as a documentary filmmaker, is your portfolio. When any organization, however bureaucratic they are, when they put out an RFP and they want to hire a freelancer or an organization to create work, there'll be a criteria. There'll be like, bachelor's degree in filmmaking, maybe, master's, PhD, whatever. But the most important thing that matters on that list is being able to demonstrate similar work. So if people are looking for someone to create a film about refugees, and you already shot something about refugees, you're going to come out on top. It doesn't matter if there's someone out of New York Film School. If you have work that can actually speak to your client's needs, then you're golden.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask, where can we find a lot of your work, like your documentaries?
So the company is called African Storytellers, africanstorytellers.com. So if you go to Vimeo and search African Storytellers, all the links will come up. But also, if you watch CNN, there's a chance that you've seen some of my work there. But those are two good places to catch some of my stuff.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nemo, for that question. Also, just wanted to add too that I think the idea of having a portfolio is super, super crucial. And if you're thinking about, if you're an artist here on the call, and if you're thinking about creating a portfolio, do it now, do it today. You can create a free site using Google Sites to put up all of your work for people to see. I even have a Google site because it's free. Right, so it's not something that you have to put money towards to have a portfolio that you can send forward to people. So yeah, and the last question that we'll take for now is Crystal.
Thank you. So putting the artistic side apart, how is your self-directed, because we are moving into our self-directed learning, regardless if it's either art or something else. So what did you find most challenging? Because like I am more into the business aspect of growing the business and all of that. And so what was most challenging about directing your learning by yourself, and how did you overcome it? Like, what can we expect? Is there like an expectations, or is there something that you think we're going to meet, and how can we go about it?
So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. You talk about business. I think both for business and for art, when you're getting started, your biggest expectation is rejection. Just expect it. You're going to get a lot of it, and you need to be able to just keep on moving, keep on moving. It's a numbers game. The more people you ask, the better you want. So, just keep on looking for that yes, keep on looking for that yes. And my challenge right now with self-directed learning is the fact that it takes so much time. And when you start running a business, when you start making money, it's easy to take your eye off that ball of continuing to improve and just, get comfortable. Your bills are paid, you buy your first car, you rent a nice apartment, it's easy to stop there. But I think if you look at all, like some of the biggest companies in the world, you look at an Apple, you look at a Microsoft, I think one of the biggest things these guys do and continue to do is to kind of step back and think, is this the best that we can do? When you look at when the iPhone was created, these guys basically took a step back and they're like, is this all a phone can do? Does it have to have physical buttons? Is Nokia the best thing that we can offer people? when you watch, I don't know if you watched the Bill Gates documentary, Bill's Brain. There's one thing he does. He every so often just goes out into a cabin on the lake in the middle of nowhere and just put aside time to think, just to stop and think. Because when you're doing, you don't really have that opportunity. So that is a challenge that I face, being deliberate about putting aside time to think and to learn, and just knowing that never stops. If you want to be at the forefront, you have to be able to keep on doing that and being deliberate about doing it.
Thank you, Isaac. So I hope that was really helpful to everybody. I'm sorry that we don't have more time for more questions, but if you're interested in seeing more of Isaac's work, I've put the link in the chat box, which will take you to more links of his work. But Isaac, I have one more thing that I'd like from you, and that is your answers to some rapid fire questions. So just so that we're all on the same page, I'm going to ask you a question that you can't explain your answer, you just give your answer, all right? And there's 5, so it shouldn't take too long. First question, video editing or script writing?
Video editing.
All right. Michael B. Jordan or David Kaluuya to play the adult version of you in the feature film about you?
Daniel Kaluuya.
Okay. Documentaries or narrative films?
Ish, man. Narrative films.
Okay. You have 99 problems as a filmmaker. This is not one of them.
Watching movies and claiming it's research.
Okay. All right, and last question. In 5 words or less, what $1 million advice do you have for the entrepreneurs on this call?
You learn by doing.
Hey, wow. Nice. Did you think about that beforehand? That's a good one. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Isaac. It was lovely having you. This was a really informative and exciting conversation. I hope we have the chance to sit down and talk again. But for now, thank you. And hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right, peace, guys. Enjoy your weekend.